10-year-old Prince Harry has been left in an awkward position after a London court was shown a series of racy messages between him and a female reporter for a tabloid newspaper. Harry and 6 other celebrities are suing the publisher of the Daily Mail on Sunday.
Royal experts are calling this the worst week of Prince Harry's life since he left the palace. A setback so brutal that even his loudest defenders went quiet. Harry walked out to the cameras smiling, thumbs up, playing the man in control. He was not in control. Behind that smile sat a crushing court defeat, a palace that publicly contradicted his side of the story.
Prince Harry arrives in London today for a visit that's already generating some controversy.
And old private messages he never wanted the world to read. And through it all, Meghan stayed silent, an ocean away, moving forward without him. What the experts say happened next changes everything. The return. Harry arrived in Britain hoping to look confident, focused, and fully in control. This trip had reportedly been in the works since January. There was talk of a family reset, whispers that the children might come over, even suggestions of a quiet visit to Althorpe, where his mother is buried. His team kept hinting that Meghan could still appear later in the week, possibly at his Invictus event on Friday. Royal commentators described it as a deliberate will-they-won't-they strategy, designed to keep every camera pointed in his direction. And for a few hours, it worked. Everyone was watching. The plan was working exactly as designed. Maximum attention, zero commitment, and a nation refreshing its feeds.
Prince Harry has lost his latest legal case against the media, taking on the publishers of the Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday.
Then the High Court ruling landed, and the entire visit changed shape in a single afternoon. The Invictus messaging faded. The charity appearances slid into the background. The carefully staged suspense around Meghan collapsed into irrelevance. And every royal expert in Britain turned toward one question. How had Harry ended up losing this badly? The verdict. The court rejected the claims brought against Associated Newspapers, with the judge finding that the articles at the center of the case had been lawfully sourced. Commentators across the spectrum described it as a crushing defeat, not just legally, but reputationally. One expert put it bluntly, arguing that a man who wants to be taken seriously cannot afford a judgment in which his own credibility as a witness is called into question. In their view, that finding jeopardizes his authority on the very issues he has built his post-royal identity around. The financial picture looked even darker. Reports placed the overall legal costs in the tens of millions of pounds, with Harry's personal share of that bill and the role of insurance still unresolved. Harry responded by calling the judgment a complete and utter whitewash, insisting the evidence had not been treated fairly. And that reaction created a second problem on top of the first. Instead of absorbing the loss, he appeared determined to keep fighting, which, according to several commentators, is exactly the pattern that got him here. That is what made the smiling Chatham House exit so striking. Critics argued the thumbs up was an attempt to suggest everything was fine, when everyone watching knew it was far from fine. This was supposed to be a carefully planned royal return, and within hours it had become something else entirely. But the money was never going to be the worst of it. Waiting inside that courtroom was a witness and a stack of old messages, capable of doing more damage than the ruling itself. The messages, because the verdict was only half the damage. Before we get into the resurfaced messages, and why Meghan's absence may have been the loudest statement of the entire week, take 1 second and subscribe. This story is moving faster than the headlines, and you do not want to miss where it goes next. The case dragged Harry's past back into the spotlight through the testimony of Charlotte Griffiths, the Mail on Sunday journalist Harry described in court as someone he barely knew. Under oath, Harry said he did not remember using the nickname Mr. Mischief. He claimed he stopped speaking to her after discovering she was a journalist. He questioned how close they had ever really been. Then the messages surfaced. According to Griffiths, Harry was the one who first reached out to her over Facebook. In those exchanges, he called her Griff.
And the reason why is there's a kind of glitch on the website, and some kind of Eagle Royal fans put in 1 million, I want to buy 1 million jars of jam, and they were told, no, you can't buy 1 million, there's only 135,000 left. And if you do the maths, it means she sold about, you're better at maths than me, AJ, but she sold about 862,000.
He answered to Mr. Mischief. He gave her his phone number. He even wrote that he missed their movie Snuggles, a phrase Griffith says referred to a group of friends watching a film after a party. nothing more. But innocent or not, those friendly, familiar messages looked nothing like the distant relationship Harry had described under oath. The judge called Griffiths an impressive witness and accepted her account of how she obtained her information. Griffiths said she never wanted those messages made public and would never have released them if Harry had not taken the newspaper to court. Think about that for a moment. Harry launched this case over alleged invasions of privacy, and the case itself is what pulled his private messages into public view. Her testimony struck at the foundation of his entire argument. Harry's case leaned on the belief that personal details about his life could only have reached journalists through unlawful methods. But his own memoir described a busy, social, talkative young life. His messages showed friendly contact, continuing over time. And Griffiths suggested that the version of the past Harry presented in court was far more carefully curated than the reality she remembered. One more detail left commentators puzzled. The articles at the heart of the case concerned events from years before Harry ever met Meghan, including his relationship with Chelsea Davy. Yet Harry became emotional in court and spoke about the impact on his current life with Meghan. Several experts openly questioned why she was brought into a dispute about stories published 15 years ago, and wondered how it must have felt for her to hear an old relationship discussed so emotionally in court. The absence. And that raises the question that hung over the entire week. Where was Meghan? Several royal commentators believed that if Harry had won, Meghan would have been standing right beside him, celebrating the result and turning the moment into a Sussex victory story. But Harry lost, and Meghan stayed out of sight. Kinsey Schofield argued this fits a pattern viewers have seen before. In her telling, Meghan stepped back while Harry absorbed the criticism during the promotion of Spare. She was absent when he lost previous legal battles, and nowhere in frame during his most bruising interviews. Whenever Harry faces his hardest public moments, Schofield argued, Meghan becomes less visible, and reappears when the story turns positive. Charlotte Griffiths went further, saying that if Harry had defeated the newspaper, she believed Meghan would have been beside him, declaring they had beaten another enemy together. Instead, Harry delivered his speeches alone, while the verdict swallowed every headline. Now, to be absolutely clear, Meghan has never publicly confirmed any of this. The claims that she was furious about the accommodation dispute, that she never intended to travel, that security demands were set impossibly high on purpose. All of that comes from commentators and unnamed sources, not from Meghan herself. But her silence left an empty space in the story. And in royal public relations, an empty space never stays empty for long. Someone always fills it. What is not speculation is what she was actually doing.
Prince Harry won 15 claims in the case against Mirror Group newspapers of unlawfully gathering information for stories published about him.
While Harry fought for his reputation in London, Meghan continued moving forward in America, promoting her products, clothing lines, and business ventures, building a commercial life on her own terms. To her defenders, that looks like focus. To her critics, it looks like distance. Either way, the split screen could not have been sharper. Harry, alone, absorbing a defeat in Britain. Meghan, an ocean away, moving on. But the week had one more shock waiting, and it came from inside the palace itself. The palace standoff. Buckingham Palace did something it almost never does. It answered back. Here is the timeline the commentators have pieced together. Harry had been offered accommodation at a royal residence months in advance, an offer described as very generous, with a Friday deadline to respond. Reports claimed he declined after the deadline passed, then changed his mind and requested a much shorter stay, possibly after his security team pointed out that nowhere in London is safer than inside palace walls. By then, the palace reportedly explained the original arrangements could not simply be rebuilt at the last minute. This was never as simple as booking a hotel room. Security, staffing, catering, transport, and access all had to be coordinated around plans that originally involved a family visit. Yet, headlines still appeared claiming Harry would be staying at Buckingham Palace, until the palace publicly stated that he would not. So, who created the confusion? Griffiths claimed Sussex sources had previously fed her details of boyish private meetings between the two camps. So, was the palace being blamed for a story that Harry's own side had helped set in motion? Schofield described the dispute as something that risked being framed as a setup, a way to make King Charles look cold, as if he had suddenly taken a room away from his own son. If the public believed that version, Harry could once again appear rejected, but this time, the palace shared its own timeline. Charles did not reverse course under pressure. For once, the institution refused to absorb the blame quietly, and underneath that refusal, something colder was showing through. Cold distance. Harry has repeatedly said he wants reconciliation, but commentators asked the obvious question. How can Charles trust a private conversation when every detail could become tomorrow's headline? How can William reopen the door when a family meeting might resurface in a book, an interview, or a documentary? The royal family, one expert observed, does not only fear conflict, it fears becoming content. William was reportedly only a few miles away during part of the visit. The brothers did not meet. Harry was also absent from the wedding of his cousin, Peter Phillips. Tina Brown described the family dispute as a Cold War and said most relatives have moved on, even if Charles still hopes some form of reconciliation remains possible. One report claimed Harry's name never came up during a long conversation with one of William's oldest friends. That is not anger, that is emotional distance, and distance, many believe, is far harder to repair. Even the trip's softer moments turned into controversy. Harry's first public appearance supported photographer Meghan Harriman, a longtime friend who had recently stepped down from a South Bank center role amid criticism over political posts. The appearance may have been nothing more than loyalty to a friend, but it instantly triggered another debate, the last thing a man seeking calm, serious headlines needed. Which brings us to the part of this story nobody in Harry's camp seems willing to say out loud. Moving forward, start with Invictus. Commentators warned the games were being buried under Harry's personal controversies, a genuine achievement for wounded veterans overshadowed by courtroom drama, palace briefings, and speculation about his marriage. He wanted this week to prove he could still pull Britain's attention towards serious causes. Instead, the defeat pushed Invictus off the front pages. Then, there is the money. The end of major media deals, fresh questions about legal bills, and a charity portfolio under real strain, with reports of Setback pursuing a defamation claim against its own founder and the Archewell operation scaled back. He wanted to look independent. The week kept asking how much longer independence can be afforded. Through it all, King Charles simply carried on with his official duties. Reports suggest he remains open to seeing Harry and his grandchildren, but unwilling to bend every rule and deadline to solve each crisis. That distinction matters. A father can love his son deeply while a king still protects the institution. Harry may want Charles to be both father and fixer. The monarchy does not work that way, which leaves Harry flying home to something heavier than any headline. The decisions waiting on the other side of the Atlantic. What next? Harry returns to California carrying far more than a legal defeat. He has to decide whether to appeal or finally walk away. He has to protect Invictus from his own headlines. He has to explain how the accommodation story spiraled. And he has to live with a public narrative in which Meghan appears during the victories and vanishes during the defeats. A narrative she has never confirmed, but has never publicly challenged either. Harry came to Britain to prove he still mattered. The court ruled against him. The palace held its ground. Old messages undermined his testimony. And Meghan kept moving forward without him in the frame. So, here is the question the experts cannot stop asking, and the one I want answered in the comments. Was Meghan's absence simple coincidence, or the clearest signal yet of where the Sussex story is heading? Tell me what you think below, and if you want to follow every twist of this saga, subscribe now so you never miss the next chapter.